From Ticker, you're watching She's the Boss. Here's Jules Brooke.
Hi and welcome to She's the Boss. I'm Jules Brooke and I'm the founder of Handle Your Own PR. Now, She's the Boss is a show all about female founders and women doing extraordinary things in business, and let me tell you, there's a lot of them. But today we're going to do something slightly differently. Have you ever wondered how you can access funds to scale your business? We all know that female founders only get 2% of venture capital funding each year, and we know it because we've talked about it now a couple of times over the last couple of shows. So how can you find enough money to scale? The other thing is, do you wonder what other female founders are doing, how their businesses are growing? Maybe you just want to know what's happening across the board for women that have started their own business and want to grow it to a large enterprise, either nationally or globally. Why isn't it happening more frequently? These are all questions that I have been dying to find out the answers to. So today, as I said, we're going to do a slightly different show. We're going to talk about the new research about female founders and barriers to scale that's been released by the Advisory Board Centre in Queensland. We're also going to be talking about equity crowdfunding, which is also known as crowdsourced funding, and how that could be a good way to find investors for your business. So let me introduce my two guests, both very qualified to be talking about these topics, and I'm very excited to have them on the show. We've got Jan Easton, who's the COO of the Advisory Board Centre and also the Female Founders Program lead. And we've got Claire Brown, who's the campaign manager for Birchal. So welcome, ladies.
Thanks, Jules. Lovely to be here.
It's great to have you here.
Thanks, Jules. Wonderful to be here as well.
Great. So let's get talking about some of these stats and what's going on with females and funding. So firstly, Jan, what does the Advisory Board Centre actually do?
Yeah, thanks, Jules. The Advisory Board Centre, we are the professional body for the global advisory sector. So our real mission is to support the advancement and adoption of independent best practice advisory boards.
Right. Great. So why did you do the research?
Yeah, I think all great research starts out of curiosity.
Yes.
And we've got this insight into really the mid-sized business market and scaling businesses.
Right.
And through some specific initiatives that we do, we also support female-led businesses. And what we found through some just preliminary research is that there was a real divide between the outcomes of the general business population and specifically female-led businesses. So we thought there's something here. We need to dig a little bit deeper. And that was really the genesis point for this research.
I'm so glad you did, because there's been so little research. It's really, really hard to find anything about female founders and what's going on. So I think what you've done is brilliant, and I can't wait to talk about it a little bit more. But first, I just want to speak to Claire. So welcome, Claire. Can you explain what Birchal does?
Yeah, thanks, Jules. So Birchal is an equity crowdfunding platform, and it's our belief that every Australian should have the opportunity to invest in brands they love. So our real role is to help Australian businesses of most ages and stages access capital through the support of their customers and networks, and really turn their customers into brand ambassadors.
And so how does that differ from what we understand as crowdfunding? You know, that I think a lot of it's been reward-based, but what's equity crowdfunding?
Yeah, sure. So look, reward-based crowdfunding is what you'd come across on things like Kickstarter, Indiegogo and Possible, where people get, as the name suggests, a reward in return for their pledge. Equity crowdfunding is a little bit different, in which businesses are actually offering securities in the forms of fully owned ordinary shares in their company, and people who are putting their money into the business actually receive equity in that business. So it is a private business, so it's not the Australian stock market, but it works in a similar fashion to that.
It's just such a good idea. I think it is as a general, but I'm interested in your opinion. Do you think it's a particularly good idea for female founders?
Equity crowdfunding, absolutely, because I think the core thing of equity crowdfunding is being able to connect with a crowd that believes in your vision.
Right.
And you have to want to engage that crowd and, of course, at some point in the future, offer them a return on their investment. But really, as I said, creating this group of ambassadors around you that want to see you succeed. And what women do really well is build communities.
Is build those communities.
And we have such a great ability to connect with others on levels that we all find common goals. And I think that's why equity crowdfunding is a particularly excellent way for women to be
Yeah,
raising capital because
I agree. There's a lot of women out there that have got big communities. I mean, one of the women that I've interviewed on the show, gosh, her name has just completely left my mind. But I mean, she has 800,000 people following her and on her database. So those kind of people, it's absolutely perfect. And you obviously don't need to have that many to do it. But let's just get on to the stats about what's happening out there in sort of female founder land. Jan, the first thing that that really caught my eye, and it still surprises me, and I'd love all of us to talk about it, is that 68% of female founders are over 40. That actually really surprised me because everything that you ever read about, incubators, startups, it's all seen as a really young kind of dynamic sort of sector, I guess. And it's really surprised me that nearly 70% of female founders are 40 to 60 years old. And in fact, only 1% are under 30, according to your research. So why do you think that is?
Some of it might be a little bit of the research is a snapshot into a particular cohort, but certainly there is a market increase and rise in female founders that are in that age bracket, that 40 to 60. There's probably a couple of different reasons for that. One, it's choice and autonomy, flexibility, but also leveraging experience that's been built up over that earlier career of working, which makes those female-led businesses incredibly resourceful and just a fantastic opportunity to back because they're able to leverage what they know and what they've seen out there in the business market before. Certainly the future of business is increasingly female. The ABS data itself, when it looked back over the last 10 years, there's been an 80% increase in female business ownership. And the majority of new business registrations are female-owned, which was really surprising to me as well, regardless of age, just this increase in female-led businesses across the board, all sectors, all industries.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder, anecdotally, I kind of feel like there's a lot of women who, like me, started businesses when our babies were young, which really was the mumpreneur kind of wave that I think happened in the early 2000s, early to mid 2000s. And out of that, if we had all started at sort of, 30-ish, which we all were, and there were loads and loads of us, then we are that cohort now. And I noticed the other thing in your research was that a lot of the businesses are older than 5. In fact, the majority were between 5 and 10 years old, which would kind of feed into that stat pretty well as well.
Absolutely. And the other, I guess, area that leads into is we see that there's a larger percentage of female-owned businesses. They stay smaller in size for longer periods of time. And that was actually something that was really interesting to us because what we know is sitting behind that is some people will start a business for, as I said, autonomy or choice or lifestyle factors, and they want to right-size that business to their circumstances. So growth is not really a motivator or an ambition for them. But really, if we look at where the economic prosperity and security is going to come from in the future, certainly as we're looking down the barrel of a recession, it's going to come from those scaling businesses. So if we have more women going into business and they have that desire and potential to grow, what are the factors that we need to unlock to get that economic benefit from them?
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think, Claire, at Birchall? Have you been having young women or older women? Is there sort of a theme that you've noticed?
Well, look, equity crowdfunding is still quite young, Jules. It's only really been around since late 2018. So we've definitely, unfortunately, had a lot more. Well, not unfortunately, and they've been awesome businesses. We've had a lot of male businesses come through, and not a huge amount of female businesses. But look, even though you've said that, actually our most famous campaign, Sheba Rideshare, George McEncroe is
from Sheba. I invested in that one.
Yeah, no, and it's a really awesome company, and exactly what you've actually mentioned about starting a business when she had her children. She's had a bunch of experience. She's got the resilience she needs to operate in a really tough market. So she had a fantastic campaign. We've even had actually a chocolate factory from far north Queensland run by Ruth Med and by Lynn Jenkins. They're actually, I'd never asked them, but I actually believe they might be in their 50s or over, and a really successful business up there as well. And they also did a really successful campaign too, as well as younger founders as well. We've currently got Renee Bunster, who's doing Bunster's Hot Sauce, this incredible American hot sauce
that
brand.
super hot sauce that I love the name of it. Once you work out what it's for, then Bunster's a great name.
Yeah, exactly. Not sure if I can throw her on TV, but it's, shit the bed hot sauce.
Yeah.
And she's got this legion of fans around the world. And I think the youngest female founder we've had on the platform would be Jane Koo from Bring Me Home.
Right.
Who I believe, and again, you never really ask these questions about how old people are when they do the campaigns, because it doesn't really matter.
No.
But I believe in her late 20s, early 30s, with a really fantastic social enterprise to help cut food waste and get unused food from hospitality venues to people for a discounted price. So amazing. I'd love to see more women on our platform.
Yes, well, I would too, because I just think that equity crowdfunding is just so perfect, as you say, because most of them do have that community. And if your community supports you and you're a female founder, then they're probably happy to put in. And that's one of the other things we should talk about. With Birchal, you can put in $100 or $250. You don't have to put in $25,000 in order to invest, which makes it very accessible for everyone, particularly in your own network.
Yeah, exactly. And I think with the raises that we do, it's not only the investment that people can put in to get the shares, but we are a hybrid platform. So you can have rewards like you would a normal reward crowdfund campaign in tandem with your equity crowdfunding campaign. So someone puts in $500 and you might decide to pre-sell your product. So if you've got a consumer product or a service, that's a really great way not only to get investors on board that want to help you with your vision, but also get more product off the shelves and get people who have your thing that really want to help promote it.
Yeah.
But I just want to bring back to your point, Jan, about women businesses being 5 years old, slightly slower growth and what we're going to see. And again, not to bang too much on equity crowdfunding because there's such a range of funding options out there. But I think something that women need to be considering when they're looking for funding is, what sort of funding are you looking for? Are you looking for the rocket funding of millions of dollars that are really going to, propel you to somewhere?
Yeah.
Or something like equity crowdfunding? It can do that, but it also really lends itself to slow and steady growth. You might do a small raise, achieve your milestones, and then come back within the same year, as Sheba did, and raise a bit more. And it really lends itself to that. I would encourage sustainable growth.
Exactly, I would encourage women to really investigate it. And I think are you the only ones in Australia doing it? Is Birchal the only one?
No, there's a few other platforms out there. Okay. I think we're the best, but
yes,
I'm biased in that. Thank you. There's a few others, Equitize, On Market, and Pledge Me. Pledge Me is run by Anna Gunther, and that's over in New Zealand and Australia, and she's excellent in that as well.
Okay.
Birchal's had quite a few campaigns, especially over the COVID period.
Cool. All right. So we don't have loads of time. I could keep talking about this forever, but another of the stats that I thought was really, really interesting is that only 22% of female founders have accessed government grants to fund their business. Now, one of the grants that's out there at the moment is the Boosting Female Founders Grant, but that requires a co-payment. And to me, that means that you need to, if you want 100,000, you've got to go and find 100,000 and they'll match it. And to me, that is one of the big hurdles for women, is accessing finances in the first place. Jan, what are your thoughts around this?
I think what's a positive thing out of the federal government's Boosting Female Founders is, one, the fact that it's starting to attract some interest, and they're trying to look at different ways to widen the pool of funds available for females. So even though it's a co-investment, they're trying to make it where it's a guaranteed co-investment. So you can actually bring that comfort level to the external investors to say, if you put in this much money, we'll get a guaranteed match. Yeah. So they're trying to widen the pool, which I think is the right idea.
Yeah.
What I think is really important is that we look at all of these strategies and say, how can we add to them? How can we build on them? Because if we just try to pull little individual levers in silos, we're not really going to shift the dial very much. We need the whole ecosystem looking at how they can actually make a difference and impact this. Money is certainly one of the things. Money gives you choice. Money gives you options. But it's money and other things that female founders really need to make a difference. They need money. They need to know what to do with that money to actually scale and put a rocket under their growth if that's their choice, not just fund their operations. But they need access to customers. They need access to advice networks. They need access to different forms of investment to build on those different sources. And they also need to make sure that they're getting the right advice and the right support networks around them. One of the other factors we found is that women were more likely to mix their networks. So the people that support them personally versus the people that support them in business. And often those need to be two different sources of advice and two different sources of support. But women were more likely to lump them all into the same barrel at the same time. So it means that they might not be reaching out beyond their own direct networks to get the right advice or explore the right options at the right time.
Yeah. I mean, I just think, I understand that there are other barriers, but I'm really fixated on funding because I do think that with the money, and I loved your point, which is very true, of people do need to work out what they're going to do with it before they go and access it. But I do think that was a really interesting stat. And the other one that caught my eye is that 60% of, I get my stats right. 64% of female founders use their personal savings to fund their business. Now that to me is unusual because out there in when you're talking to the sort of the general public about fundraising, I don't think that a lot of them, they think of their seed funding as go and borrow it from friends and family or whatever, but it's really just their own money that they're using. And the other stat was that 60% intend to use their cash flow to fund the growth. Now, Claire, this brings us back nicely to Birchal. Why is equity crowdfunding a good solution, and what stage do you need to be at before you should think about something like that?
That's a really good question, Jules. So with investing equity crowdfunding, I see you've got my little video there about how the payment process works for an investor. But yeah, this is one of our pages. So look, I mean, with equity crowdfunding and how it works, what we usually recommend to people is that when you are at a point of growth, that you've got this community that want to put money into your business and help you get to the next level, it really should come from a place of it's a growth phase, not necessarily a starting phase, because when you think about investors and you're asking people for money to help you grow, people want to back a winning horse. They don't love taking a punt when it comes to
So they want to see a few runs on the board.
Yeah, they want to see a few rungs on a board. So there's a few different ways that you can achieve this. So we get a lot of companies that come to us that are pre-revenue, which doesn't mean that you're automatically, not going to be able to come through the platform. But it just we need to have that conversation about what you need to have in place. So for instance, if you're a company that is in market and selling your products, really great indicators to show to investors is things like, the number of customers you have, your sales growth, return customers, all that sort of thing. But however, if you're a company that might be pre-revenue, it might be a little bit tougher, but there's things like your advisory board, who is helping you run this business, that's going to instill confidence in investors to be like, look, they're quite young, but they seem to know what they're doing. You might have a previous business that you're drawing upon for experience. Hey guys, look, I did quite well here. This is the confidence I can help provide you that I'll be able to do well here as well. And I think as well, we get a lot of companies that maybe actually have a user base of quite dedicated fans. Now, when you think about Instagram influencers, content creators, bloggers, anything like that, if you've got people that love listening to your message and you're deciding to then monetize that, you still have people in your network. They might not be customers, but they absorb your content, they trust what you do, and that sort of crowd is nothing's easy in this world. But I mean, that sort of crowd is much more likely to be like, great, we know this person, we trust this person, we'll come along the journey with them. And I think when it comes to equity crowdfunding in particular, two things I'd suggest to any founder out there, male or female, is number one, what honestly is in it for the investor? Because if you're thinking about it from their point of view, the entire capital raise, you'll have a much more successful raise because you'll be able to think how they think and understand how to pitch your business appropriately. Number two, what is the journey of your business? Not only at that point in time that you're doing your capital raise, but what has been your journey to that point?
Yep.
and what's the journey in the
where do you wanna
future,
go?
because people will buy into both journeys. And I think, as I said, ideally you've got your product in market and it makes it less challenging if you're doing a capital raise with that. But if you are a pre-revenue business or pre-market,
It's still
that doesn't
possible.
bar you from this. You just have to think a little bit more about the other things you want to put in place to inspire
great.
that confidence in investors.
Okay, now we've only got a couple of minutes, but I really want to do one last stat with you, Jan, which is, you're the Advisory Board Centre, and also Claire was just talking about if you're trying to find investors, your advisory board may be one of those things that gives a comfort to people. Can you talk about the fact that only 86% of small business owners, so therefore only 14% have one, 86% don't have one in the female founder space? Why do you think that is?
I think it's about knowledge and it's about access again. So knowing that you have the option to be able to put together an advisory board, really surround yourself with a group of people whose primary motivation is to help you get where you want to be. That's the first thing. People conceptually understand an advisory board, but it's the practicality of it where they fall off a bit of a cliff. How do I do it? Where do I start? Who do I actually ask to be on my advisory board? And then when I get people there, what do we do?
Well, I was going to say, actually, I probably jumped in a little bit prematurely there. Can you just explain what an advisory board is for anyone that's listening that's not sure?
So an advisory board is an independent group of advisors. It's a collaborative way to work with mentors, if you like, and people that have, I like to say it's about closing knowledge gaps. It's finding people who know things that you don't know yet. And their sole role is to help you close those knowledge gaps in your business. So an advisory board, we advocate that you have a very formal way of engaging so that you put really good governance around your business. It operates different to a governance board in that all decision-making rests with the business owner. So you don't give up any control of your business, and you also have a lot of flexibility in the way that you can do that. We see organizations utilize advisory boards all the way from pre-revenue startups all the way through to multinational corporations utilize them.
I think it's a really good idea for people to have that support, and they may not even have known that you could, but you just basically go and find people that you admire or who have the information or the knowledge in the areas that you don't, and you ask them if they're happy to be on your advisory board. It's literally that simple. It's normally, you're normally talking about maybe a meeting a month, something like that. But those people will be your champions. And not only that, a lot of them may have networks that they can help you with. So all of you should be thinking about an advisory board and how you can get one together, because it will really help you scale your business as well. Well, listen, ladies, thank you. Oh, go on. No, go on.
Sorry, I was going to say, they can come to us for any information because we're independent in that process. Our role is to really educate people about what their options are.
Fantastic. So I was just about to say thank you both so much for coming, and how can people find you and the report? So I'll start with you, Jan. What's the best way for people to get hold of the report and also find out more about advisory boards?
The Advisory Board Centre website is a great resource for that information. So just advisoryboardcentre.com.au. You can access the report there, and also businesses can access our complimentary advisor concierge service, which is purely an education point to help them understand what their options are and then facilitate some connections to advisors if they're looking for them.
Brilliant. And with you, Claire, what's the best way, not only for people to find out how to get hold of Birchal, but also is there a way that they can find out whether they're a good fit for Birchal?
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, first and foremost, head to www.birchal.com or find us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, wherever you get stuff like that from.
Yeah.
And we have just a really simple eligibility form because with this sort of crowdfunding in Australia, there's a few things that your business has to have as ruled by ASIC. And if you're eligible under those rules, then all we want to know is a little bit more information about you. And look, Birchal's a small but very dynamic and effective team, so more than likely you'll be speaking to me. Super friendly as well. I mean, how are we not? So yeah, I mean, look, there's this eligibility form. Just honestly fill it out. 99% you'll be talking to me anyway, or just flick me an email at Claire, CLAIRE @birchal.com, and we can organise to have a chat, because it's really common for businesses to come and speak to us 6 months, even 12 months before they raise capital. Because again, we have that initial chat and you don't know what you don't know. And part of
That's
my
right.
role and our
That's
role
right.
at Birchall's to help you guys work out, as you're saying, Jan, plugging those knowledge gaps. I mean, like, cool, if this is something that might be good for you in your business, these things to go away
Perfect.
and work on
Brilliant.
before you do it.
Okay, so thank you both so much for coming. I hope that you viewers have really enjoyed the show. On She's the Boss, which is on every Thursday at 10:30. I also run free Zoom lunches for female founders if you go to she'stheboss.com.au. And if you're interested in hearing more about female founders, I run a podcast called She's the Boss Chats, where each episode is a deep dive, long conversation with one female founder about their entrepreneurial journey. And it is now available across all the podcast platforms. So thank you very much for joining me today. And I look forward to seeing you next week when I'll be interviewing 2 more amazing female founders.
There are now more ways to watch Ticker. Download our apps for Apple and Android devices. We're live on Twitter and YouTube Live. And you can catch us on Amazon Alexa and Google Home. Head to the Ticker website for more. The startup community has been hit hard by the impacts of coronavirus, but with it comes opportunity too. Ticker brings you the latest information and interviews with startup founders about how to survive and ways to grow. Head to the Ticker website or download the Ticker apps.